all of you that are not Buddhists understand that Buddhism is a vast philosophy. It's enormous, 2,500 years, and it's based on Hinduism, which goes back millennia before. This vast philosophy of the world's most enlightened beings that have incarnated into it, and each one of them, all of the masters, have incarnated into Buddhism and produced a wealth of metaphysical outpouring. There are two main schools, well, three schools if you wish. The Theravada, that is also called the Hinayana, or lesser vehicle, or Theravada. The word Theravada means the doctrine of the elders, and that's the oldest school that was founded by the Buddha or by Gautama. And then there's the Mahayana school, so that's the great vehicle. And the basic difference between these two schools is that the Theravada is involved in self-realization, focused upon meditation, but it hasn't moved. It stays with the old teachings, the Tripitaka. Now, Mahayana is different. It's not so much upon the self and its illumination. Its focus is the bodhisattva path and the path of compassion. So it has evolved since the time of the Buddha and has never, ever, ever stopped evolving. The third school is what's called the Tantrayana. The Tantrayana is quite important. Now, my philosophy is Tantrayana, basically, Yogacarya Madhyamika Tantrayana field. And the Bardo Thödol, this book, is Tantrayana. And basically it means what's called Yabyum, or the male-female principle fused into a unity. And the whole philosophy there is the highest meditative, metaphysical output of Buddhism. This is the path of the development of high spiritual powers, of cities. And nearly all the tantras, all of the tantras, not nearly, are veiled, are knotted. Very difficult to understand because of the teachings have been wrapped in enigmas, because it all relates to the awakening of chakras, of the development, powers of Kundalini, and the higher powers of mind, what's called the dharmakāya. And within the Tantrayana, the philosophy is the philosophy of the 5 Buddhas of meditation, the 5 dhyanic Buddhas. I just want those of you that are not Buddhists to have a bit of a basic understanding of the Bardo Thödol. Now, the word Bardo, often I think of it in terms of dimensions of perception, but it's not quite that. Bardo is just simply a change of state of mind, a locality of mind. The Bardo Thödol is called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it's good for all of you to have a copy of Evans Wentz's The Tibetan Book of the Dead, to have a good idea of this book and its contents. Now, this particular teachings of the Bardo Thödol in the Tibetan philosophy, in the Tibetan religion, when somebody dies, they bring a priest, a lama, and he spends 49 days reciting this particular text for 49 days over the deceased. And then, according to the exoteric teachings, the body or the entity reincarnates. 49 is 7 times 7. That's the exoteric teachings. Of course, the esoteric teachings is something completely different. So Bardo is basically a state of transition. Now, most people think of this particular book, therefore, as a liturgy to help people that have died to live in the afterlife before they're reborn again. And that is part of it. But that's the exoteric. In reality, it's a meditation treatise to assist the meditator to go through the stages of changes of mind in meditation. In other words, the bardos. And so there's a list of different bardos, and part A of this particular book will list them and explain that. This particular part B is what Evans Wentz calls the Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation. So it's specifically on mind, whereas part A is on the various deities, the ferromorphic deities, all of the other attributes of the psychic constitution, of the chakras, that are veiled by the deities, of the Herukas, the wrathful deities, the peaceful deities. There are 52 and 48 to make 100, and there's an extra 17 deities. So it goes into all of these attributes of the meditation process, of the liberation process. And it's a fascinating book for those of you that actually want to study a Tantra properly, because I've unnutted this particular Tantra, the Bardo Thödol. Now, this particular part of the Bardo Thödol is more specifically on the Yogacarya philosophy, not the Yogacarya Madhyamika philosophy, but it's more directly on mind itself. What is mind? What are the attributes of mind? And all of Buddhist philosophy is really about this. It's the most detailed exposition of what mind is and is not that exists on this planet. Modern psychiatrists and psychologists, they're children compared to Buddhist philosophers when it comes to an understanding what mind is. So this particular portion of the book is really the heart of the understanding of mind. Now, later on in this particular Bardo Thödol, I give a diagram here of the throat center. Whereas in the earlier portion, I go into the Ajna center, the solar plexus center, and the head lotus, and go into those chakras in great detail. This particular portion of the Bardo Thödol is the throat center. And the throat center is that which controls mind. So to properly understand the Bardo Thödol is also a proper comprehension of the throat. So this particular book, because it goes into mind proper, is in many ways the heart of Buddhism, the proper understanding of what Buddhist philosophy is about. As I said, this whole philosophy is incredibly vast, but this particular book, in many ways, is the synthesis. The book, of course, as I mentioned before, was written by Guru Rinpoche, and in our particular esoteric philosophy, he's a 7th degree initiate now, so it gives you an idea of his level. Now, the book is written for those that are seriously engaged in meditation, like all of you are. It's not written for beginners on the path. The stanzas of this particular Bardo Thödol, they expect you to have a guru that is fully enlightened to reveal the meaning of the words, to give you the meditation, for you to go into seclusion in a forest normally, or in a cave, or wherever it is, and practice and practice and practice. It's not for beginners. The next thing I just want to point out, this Rinpoche called Doucheon Rinpoche, and that's his book. It's well over 1,000 pages thick, and he's the head of the Nyingma tradition, following from Vasubandhu and Guru Rinpoche. So you get basically Guru Rinpoche, Vasubandhu, and then Doucheon Rinpoche was the head of this particular form of philosophy, which I'm teaching you now. He died in the 70s or 80s or something like that at Kalimpong. So the interesting thing was, esoterically, if you wish, that Helena Roerich, and all of you know who she was, is buried at his head monastery in Kalimpong, and her stupa is there. And so she has a good connection with him, and he is the main author that I use in my books when I'm writing my Buddhist books, specifically the Bardo Thödol, etc., because this philosophy is the teachings of what's called secret mantra, which is the Nyingma Yogacarya Madhyamika tradition, which is what I basically am teaching in my Buddhist philosophy. So you know the tradition. It comes, if you wish, a fusion of Roerich, Doucheon Rinpoche, and Longchenpa, Vasubandhu, and then all the way back to Nagarjuna and then Buddha. So all you know where we sit Buddhistically. We started last week reading from the Bardo Thödol. I want everyone to have a proper understanding of Buddhism, and specifically Tibetan Buddhism, which is what this book is, and to get an idea of the sense of ritual, the devotion, the intensity of meditation, that the Tibetans, certainly at the time when Evans Wentz writing how devotional and religious they were, this is serious meditation, and the text is for enlightenment. And for all of you to try to get an idea of what it is that the hierarchy are trying to produce in your consciousness, the same type of attitude of mind as those Tibetans. Though we have our Western mind structures and we live in these very, very materialistic society that is the very antithesis of what Tibet was. So it's how to transpose that type of Tibetan devotion and meditative stream into the consciousness of Western disciples, of all of us. And you can see that this is a bit of a difficulty. Now, with this particular yoga of the Great Liberation, there's always mantras. And most of us don't understand what the mantras are. Like at the ending of the last portion I read, they had samaya, yang, yang, yang. Now, of course, these are just words. But the term samaya is infallible knowledge, enlightenment knowledge, absolute truth. And then it's also within that word, it involves a pledge, a sacred pledge. The yogin makes a sacred pledge to obtain that infallible knowledge, enlightenment. And it brings together all of the mechanisms of that pledge, the scriptures that they're reading, their intense devotion to produce their enlightenment, their meditation, the instructions, what's sometimes called pith instructions, seed or core instructions from the guru. All of this is brought together in that word samaya. So it's not just words, it's actually very meaningful mantra, a pledge that I will do this, a pledge that I will study this, a pledge that I will expend X number of months or years, if need be, in solitary retreat until I obtain this. That's the word samaya. And how many of us can fulfill this particular word the way that the Tibetan yogins would have done it? Able to sit in, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, in solitary confinement because of this pledge. They took it seriously. It wasn't ad hoc. It was their whole life, their heart's emanation. And we were yogins in those lives. And we have the energy body of that pledge that we generated then, still manifesting within us now, right? That's samaya. And that's what brings you to me, that pledge. So it's not just a pledge for one life, it's a continuum. It's the energy of the enlightened being that continues from cycle to cycle, because it's the bodhisattva vow as well. And that pledge that you did as yogins very intensely in those days, very devotedly, very sincerely, hasn't really stopped. It's just been, if you want, muddied by the encumbrances of the Western materialistic society which we all live in. And that Western materialistic society, we all would love to overcome. Unfortunately, we're scattered in all the parts of the world, and it would be great if we all together, like the monks in France, in our monastery, fulfilling this type of divine pledge. And with very little distractions out there in that world. This, for me, would be joy. This would be like being in heaven, but it's not so. And so we've got this added encumbrance. And then the word ya just means vast, vast, vast. It's like a reverberation going on ad infinitum, into cosmic space, of the vastness of this pledge, of the vastness of the consciousness that's for our perception. And so the mantras are far more potent than what nowadays people intone Om Mani Padme Hum, or just the Om, they ring the bells and whatever they do. And it's normally done with the emotion, devotional emotion, and that's aspiration and all the rest of it. But that must go. You people in Canada and in America, you know how freezing it is out there. You imagine sitting in the high mountains of the Himalayas with your robe on, if you're a reaper, you just wore one cloth and that was it. As a yogin, sitting in a cave or wherever it was, doing that pledge, it's that cold, crisp, meditative mind. The emotions are gone. That's the meditation mind. Now just think of that. That warmth of the emotions is gone. It doesn't exist in this pledge. It's vast. That gives you an idea what is really meant by mantra. It's more than just opening the mouths. I don't give you many mantras. I give you mantras with words such as the gratification because they are meaningful. If I gave you Om Mani Padme Hum, and sometimes I use it, none of you know what it really means. The Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism is a good book to learn all about it. That's what that book's about. You have to be born into, infused with the energy of that mantra in order to properly use it. It's the same with meditations. I don't give you a lot of guidance in meditation, so to speak. I don't sort of direct your meditation, do this and do that, as some do, because this is, for me, not meditation. It's guidance and imagery making, if you wish. The meditation is to let go of all of that, and let go of all the formulations of mind. It's saṃsāra, and you're going beyond mind, your empirical, intellectual sort of capabilities. And you have to die to that. You have to produce that freezing, minus 25 or 30 degrees cold air in your mind and reside in that, whatever that means to you. And that is the yogi mind. So vast, vast, vast is divine wisdom. That's basically this saṃsāra mantra. But you get an idea that it's more than that. And that particular mantra is what carries you on, or carries your bodhisattva path through all of the lives that you're living. It's pushing you internally. We can call it, as Blavatsky's, the voice of the silence. It's that inner urge, that inner prompting that pushes you to want to become enlightened, to study the sacred books, to aspire to divinity. It's not something that can be drummed without. It's something that is from within. I just wanted to give you this idea of where you were in former lives and what you're trying to regain in this life, and myself as well. I mean, we're all in the same boat. We all live in this materialistic world, and we all have to survive somehow in it. And, we're struggling with such things as this coronavirus and insane governments and their power plays and things like that. Now, and I'm on page 3. You can see also that it's going to take a long time to go through this book because there's a lot to explain to you about Buddhism or the essence of Buddhism. This, again, to refresh your memory, the Yogacarya Madhyamika philosophy. And the Yogacarya is the mind-only school through yoga. And Madhyamika is that they follow the concept of śūnyātā, or the production of emptiness, which is this vast mind, if you want, or empty mind. The text starts off with this: the importance of the introduction to awareness is the heading. And it starts off with the word emaho. And emaho means compassion to all sentient beings. And again, with the Buddhists and the Tibetans specifically, before they start with anything, it's the generation of compassion for everything, all forms of life. It's love, right? So without the compassion, there's no Buddhism. without the compassion, what's the point of meditation? Now, because it's Yogacarya, which is the philosophy of Guru Rinpoche, who is the author of this, it's all concerns the investigation of mind. My books, A Treatise of Mind, is Yogacarya, this Yogacarya Madhyamika philosophy, which I expound. It's an investigation of mind, an understanding of mind. But the mind is not your intellects. The mind is sitting in that freezing cave where your mind is empty. It's not chattering with anything. It's got these mantras running through it. But most of us, I don't know what our mantras are, is food or whatever it is. Some people have sex in their head, what's the latest thing on TV or gossip, just chattering stuff. But their mantra is emaho. It just starts off with that. Compassion for all sentient beings. Oh, saṃsāra. Now, this particular passage, those of you who've got the book and have read it, knows I made it into 8 statements, or they've given 8 statements, I just numbered them, because the text I was using didn't use the numbers. But it's very important in everything to do with esoteric. And it doesn't matter. It was Guru Rinpoche, or if it's Master A, or any of the other masters, if they write something, it uses the same rules. The same philosophy is underlying it all. Whether it's in Buddhism or in Tibetan or Sanskrit or whatever, if it's by an enlightened being, then the rules of enlightened consciousness, the numerological rules that I've explained in my books, apply. And if it's not by an enlightened being, but purported to be by an enlightened being, those rules are not there. And there are a few in Buddhism that are often called enlightened, but are not. They're close to enlightenment. Or when they wrote the books, they were not enlightened, but aspiring to be. And then later on in life, they gained enlightenment. The people that read the books and read the writings of these great sages, whether it's Sanghachitta or any of the others, they don't take into account the fact that there's a point of becoming fully realized, fully liberated, and a whole process of the life of that individual getting there. And there's a difference in their writings. My writings are still getting there, if I make mistakes. They can be corrected. But if I was fully enlightened, the mistakes would not be there. And it's the same with all of these great ones. That also is just observation. I just want you all to understand. The Orthodox Buddhists out there, as I said, they don't take this into account. For them, it's just enlightenment. And the sage was enlightened. But some of these sages never attained full enlightenment. And you can see that if you understand the hierarchical precedent and you understand the way that they write things, then everything is spot on. And in this particular case, everything is spot on. These 8 statements form the 8-armed cross, and it applies or forms the rules of the 8-armed cross, which DK has explained in his books. I've repeated the information again and again and again in my books: unity, northeast, inwards to the heart of life, east, expression, southeast, and so forth. These rules, this particular methodology of interpretation, must be used to properly understand these Buddhist texts. Anything by an enlightened being. As I said, if it's not by an enlightened being, those rules are not there. So this first one, though the single nature of mind, which completely pervades both cyclic existence and nirvana, has been naturally present from the beginning, you have not recognized it. Of course, you have not recognized it because your intellect, your empirical mind, has obscured it. The single nature of mind, it's a state of mind that encompasses past, present, and future, what in Buddhism is called the 3 times. It's a continuum. And the future is known because the samskaras of the past flow into the future. The enlightened mind sees those samskaras produce the future effect. It's not perfectly expressed that way, but over a long period of time, the future is known. Because human free will can change samskaras. Now, in my explanation of this is the northeast direction of unity. It integrates the incoming factors which are to play in the mandalic expression. So it's the unity of mind. So even here in the text, they use the term unity or the single nature of mind, which is the same as unity. It's the northeast direction, because when Guru Rinpoche was writing this, that's what he had in his head, this 8-armed cross. And then he wrote what he needed to write in relationship to the expression of that cross. So all aspects of the mandala of mind are brought into a single expression, which is this term samaya, then to be differentiated into the rest of the arms of this particular wheel. In this case, it is the dharmakāyic mind that pervades all of space, incorporating this śūnyātā saṃsāra integration. Now, this is another aspect of Buddhism. The saṃsāra and śūnyātā are called the two truths. And there's some really good polemics to do, especially with Nagarjuna and the Mulamaja Makakarika, about these two truths. For instance, the Madhyamika think that only śūnyātā is worthy of taking as a truth, and saṃsāra is illusion, therefore forget about it. But in reality, with the Nyingma school, which is what we're talking about, we use saṃsāra, which is what your body of expression is, to ride as a horse into nirvana or into enlightenment, into śūnyātā. The śūnyātā saṃsāra integration is the very heart of the matter. The point of integration, actually, in our philosophy, is your soul. The soul itself, your causal form, integrates śūnyātā, which is at the very heart of the soul, and saṃsāra, which it incarnates into in order to abstract from samsara the essence of all of those experiences from all of your past lives. And so that integration into reality is the soul, except the Buddhists don't mention the word soul. I explain all of that in the third volume of my treatise on mind, how in reality it is. So what this really means is that samsara, in essence, is empty. It's empty of anything. Even modern physicists have pointed out the emptiness of space. An atom is largely empty space. It's got a tiny little nucleus and lots of empty space, and at the, literally, if you had a nucleus the size of a football at the center of the Earth, the electrons would be somewhere around where we are sitting on the circumference of the Earth. It's that far away, and everything between that football and the circumference of the Earth is empty space, and then add all those atoms together. We can go into what's called bubbles of Kilion and all that philosophy as to what makes a quark and how the quarks are bound together. It's all in my book, Esoteric Cosmology. But what I'm trying to point out to is that physicists and the Buddhists are basically in agreement here. Everything is empty. You're made of, trillions and trillions and trillions of these atoms, all bound together, and make your neurons in your bloodstream and all the rest of it. Well, it's basically empty space. It's mind integrated, or mind integrates energy into the form that you incarnate through. And then the energy manifests the matter, that is our physical body, equals mc squared. Now, of course, we can get into biology and all the rest of that. But the Buddhists are looking at matter, or śūnyātā, emptiness, as the heart of it all, or the reality of it all, because all of samsara is changing perpetually. And in my writings on my book, I point out at the heart of every atom of substance is śūnyātā. That in your heart center, that very center of your heart, in every chakra, is śūnyātā. Sort of like the eye and the cyclone. The cyclone is revolving around it, and with all the particles of dust and all the rest of it. But that I is still absolutely quiescent. And that is the pure energy field. And everything else is swirling around it. But eventually everything else absorbs back into it and becomes empty of what it was before. Eventually that cyclone, that tornado dissipates. And to obtain that emptiness in your mind, in your meditation space, that this term śūnyātā relates to, where you're residing in that. In our philosophy, in the esoteric philosophy, we use the term buddhi to denote the same thing. There's a difference, however. What the Buddhists do not understand, or the enlightened ones do, or it's not really properly understood by the average Buddhist reading the texts or their teachers, is that śūnyātā, and this is Nagarjuna also. I actually have a manuscript of the Mulamāja Mākakarika that I'd love to be able to have the time to finish it and publish it for the Buddhists. But śūnyātā is empty of being empty. It's a phrase. śūnyātā. Śūnyātā is empty of being empty. In other words, it's not empty. It's empty in terms of your empirical minds and everything that you see around you. That is saṃsāra, which is all that dust that's flowing around that tornado or that hurricane. It's empty of even the concept of being empty. What it is a zone of intense energies. And the intensity of the energy is what the Buddhists that are out there doing all their mantras and their meditations don't understand. You and all meditators have to equip your mind to be able to withstand the intensity of śūnyātā once all that dust has been blown away. If you can think of the eye of the hurricane, it's holding together that huge storm. That huge storm could be, hundreds and hundreds of miles around it. But that eye is holding it all together into situ, and it's moving across the landscape, producing, of course, sort of torrents of rain and all of the devastation in the landscape below. Same within your consciousness. There's a phrase that sometimes is used, nature abhors a vacuum. You can think of an emptiness as vacuum. So that particular vacuum, and I've got vacuum in inverted commas here, that particular vacuum, it's holding back all of that saṃsāra, all that swirling dust, everything that's around you, it's holding that in situ. There's a mechanism that prevents saṃsāra from exploding into an atomic bomb, for instance. Because that's the power within the heart of the atom, right? That's the power that is śūnyātā, if it's released prematurely, if there's no constraints around it, a nuclear reactor to contain its potency. What I'm trying to get to is that before you can obtain that enlightened mind, which is everyone's goal, your mind has to go through a slow process of conditioning itself to greater and greater intensities of energy, and to remove those attributes. Sometimes it's called attributes of mind. I use them as saṃsāras. They can also be called klishas that would explode if that energy field was released prematurely. Something like spontaneous human combustion. So this is what the path is about. This is what the initiation path is about. First of all, you start to control your bodily functions. The yogins, they don't eat much, they sit in one spot. The outer material world is of little meaning to them. But the next thing then is that they have to get rid of some scaras of the emotions, because the emotions are turn into steam, an explosive steam, like a steam generator. Suddenly, there's a hole put into it and it just explodes. You don't want to be anywhere near that. And then it's the mind itself, all of those attributes of mind and empirical thought structures. They will go AWOL. It's like a monkey with a hand grenade, something like that, if it's not controlled. So the entire path is to slowly cleanse out of you those conditions of mind or your emotions that offer resistance to the energy of śūnyātā, or this energy of buddhi. Now, when we use the term buddhi, in Sanskrit can be translated as mind. I've had to look at that and ponder on that quite a bit in my early days, but relates to the term bodhi, which is enlightenment. The term Buddha and buddhi, so you can get the idea Buddha comes the same roots as buddhi. And this energy of buddhi is what we call the fourth cosmic ether. And the interrelationship between, now buddhi, as I said, is equated with śūnyātā, or emptiness. And emptiness is, if we translate it or transpose it to our esoteric philosophy, therefore, is buddhi, and buddhi is the energy of cosmos. It's logoic, it's the logoic nadi system. Now, logos, of course, is the entity that embodies the whole world system. And if you move outside that, then you're going into a logos, a solar logos, and embodies the whole solar system, holds it all together with those nadis. And you also have a nadi system, and all that involved in yoga, the Ida Pingala and Sushumna nadi, but there's a whole stream of other nadis. The Buddhists use the term 84,000 nadis in the body. And that I explain in my books is a symbolic number. It's more closer to 96,000. When the lines of energy of the nadis interrelate or cross over, there you get the chakras, you get the bindu, the seed points of the chakras. When there's smaller number of these lines of the nadis cross over, you get the smaller chakras. When there's 21 or more, then you get the major chakras. So the points of the crossing over the nadis produces a vacuum, so to speak, an empty space, which is a space of śūnyātā. It's a little bit more complicated than that because it depends on the level of the nadi, of the chakra that we're looking at. But what I want to explain to you there is that your whole physical body is built upon that energy field that is your nadis, the chakras. The endocrine glands are the externalizations of the chakras themselves. And then the lesser chakras, the minor chakras, your organs of your body are the externalizations of them. The physical body is an automaton. It automatically responds to the energy that flows through it. So what we're looking at in yoga philosophy is energy and consciousness. But consciousness, not as you understand it, but the consciousness that the Christians would call the mind of God. So if you look at your own individual etheric body and its chakra system, now, when you get the śūnyātā, it's not your etheric body, it's the chakra system, the etheric body of the planet, of the planetary logos. That entity's etheric body. And he's a cosmic entity. So the energies that are flowing through that are from the cosmic astral plane, which the Buddhists know nothing about. So the term buddhi, as I said, equates with śūnyātā, is really that energy field that you're trying to contact or experience. And then there's 5 akashas, 5 pranas. When we are looking at our own personal selves and our enlightened from the esoteric perspective, we're looking at 5 pranas, right? The 5 elements: prana, apana, samana, udana, vyana, These are the Sanskrit terms for them. So this is yoga philosophy. But the higher correspondence of the 5 pranas in my books, I explain as the akasha. Akasha is the energy of space or abstract space. So it's the 5 akashas. Now, the 4 akashas are the 4 cosmic ethers. And then the 5th one is the domain of the soul itself, the energy field that integrates all of the souls into unity. Most of you think of your souls, those of you that sort of thought much about it, as an individual soul. It's over you or incarnate through you, right? It's producing your incarnations. But the soul itself doesn't think like that. The soul is a part of an organism. It's a group soul. It's a heart center beating out. Now, if one looks at the Buddhi or the Buddhic plane, then you've got 7 subplanes, like to all of the other planes of perception. And in fact, what the Buddhists call śūnyātā, or the true śūnyātā, is the 4th of those 7 subplanes of Buddhi. I don't want to go too much into this particular philosophy. I just want to get you an idea that Buddhi or śūnyātā is the lowest descent of cosmic space, of the energy that produces the formation of a world sphere or a solar system. Think of that energy that holds a world sphere into situ, into a form, or a solar system into a form. That is Buddhi, that is śūnyātā. And that's what you are trying to bring into consciousness as you attain or work towards your 4th initiation. And you can see why there's very few 4th degree initiates on this planet, intrinsically, whatever, because that's a very, very advanced attainment. Master of Wisdom has gone 1 step above that and has taken the 5th initiation, and in other words, brought down cosmic mind, which the Buddhists call dharmakāya. And they can't go much beyond dharmakāya because they don't understand it. The problem of the Buddhists is they don't go into the concept of creation. Well, they do in the various, highly symbolic, but they don't understand the concept of logos. What is it that creates? They have an Adi Buddha or whatever. Yes, the philosophy is there, like in my Bardo Thödol, it's all explained there as well. But it's a very, very veiled. So you understand what the process is, and you understand what you're trying to attain. When you take your 3rd initiation, the consciousness of the soul comes into you, but it's not an individual entity. It's a group consciousness. It's the collective mind. And that's what I call the alaya vijnana, enlightenment. It's the mind of everything that has caused whatever you know of to reincarnate. It's seeded by dharmakāya. So in this case, it's the dharmakāyic mind that pervades all of space, incorporating the śūnyātā saṃsāra integration. And so this śūnyātā saṃsāra, the point of integration in our consciousness or in our philosophy is the domain of the soul. The Buddhists can't use that. Therefore, they use other terminology to say the same thing. So the first phrase also refers to the beginnings of things, thus the establishment of universal karma. And then I point out, as explained in Volume 4, Chapter 3 of this series, we are told that this mind has always existed and only needs to be recognized. But you can't recognize it with that flowing mass of substance around that still center of the hurricane. Because if you're busy sort of swirling around that hurricane, you're not going to learn what is at the very center. You can see the problem for all of us is that we got to still our minds, get rid of all of the empirical flotsam and jetsam that's floating around, swirling around, and stay calm. The process of inhalation and holding the breath. The technical term for this is dhyana, the state of meditative absorption. So there's a state in meditation, which some of you have experienced, where you have forgotten yourself completely, forgotten the concept of time. It's just absorption. I use it sometimes to use the term reverie of experience. And that is dhyana. And then suddenly you're back into consciousness, sometimes even with a jolt. You're woken up out of that space where you were. And that space where you were was very, very revelatory. But that space is what you're trying to obtain at the fourth initiation all the time you live there.
What you just mentioned there about revelry, is that the equivalent of like the jhanas from the Hinayana? You know how there's the levels of absorption?
Yeah, it'll be their highest realm. I explained those, the symbolism of a stupa. If you look at all the levels of a stupa, then those are the dhyanas. But the highest of them is śūnyātā.
So is that like a state of perfect equanimity, or is it beyond equanimity?
Well, we're getting into terminology, and you can say equanimity, that's one way. But what this text here says, it's the singleness of mind, or the single nature of mind, which completely pervades both cyclic existence and nirvana. And this single nature of mind, you can look at this word equanimity as the very beginning of it, but pointing out that this is a cosmic mind. So it contains all reality in it. And the higher you get in trying to describe these planes of perception, words become more and more meaningless. It's very, very difficult. We can use, the Sanskrit terms are the best, but then they need to be translated into English. And English is not very good for yogic philosophy. So equanimity, it's just a state of getting there. As I said, you've transcended the thought processes, a state of transcendence. And within that state of transcendence, whatever the seed thought was, the experiences or the revelation relating to that comes. The Tibetans here in these texts, they use the term pure cognition. As I said, it's very difficult to explain it. It's beyond the brain, the empirical brain. What is pure cognition? No longer are you thinking of the I to me, it's gone. You're residing in that cognition. It's like we're residing in saṃsāra now, right? We look around us and we touch our bodies and whatever, and we have cognition of saṃsāra. Now, imagine a universe where the cognition of whatever is around you is the real, is the reality, that which substands samsara, that from which everything has come from. That world, that mind, it's universal, term universality. And you can see the problems of terminology. One can't really explain it that well, it has to be experienced. I use the term reverie, and the same with all these books, all of these statements here. They're trying to give words to explain the unexplainable. All of you will have had touches of this experience, of the blissfulness of being out of your consciousness state, absorbed into some reverie of experience, and then bringing into consciousness as much as you can remember. And normally the consciousness can only remember a tiny fraction of whatever it was that was being experienced. But later on, as you become more and more meditative, that experiential absorption becomes more and more sustained. And it can become sustained because your mind no longer is reactionary to it. Your mind has been cleansed of its impediments. And so the whole meditative process is to remove the impediments of mind. In my books, I use small m for empirical mind and the capital M for the mind that exists once that the impediments of the small mind, small m mind, have been removed. And what exists is the mind of Logos, the mind of the creative deity, the mind of the devas. It's their world, that which sustains their activities. They live in a field of mantra, songs, their sounds. Somewhere I talk about, I think in my Shambhala book, part C, to do with the whole of Sirius. And I say as if in the whole of Sirius, if one pin drop happened that was out of sequence, it would shatter 1,000 worlds. There's something that aberrated energy. I think sometimes I use the phrase the wings of a butterfly. One little energy field that's the source of all things. By the time you get to where we are, the reverberations have come into vast energy fields of thunder because it affects samsara massively. Just a tiny perturbation reverberates into, you can think of it as an atomic bomb explosion. What is it that caused that nuclear furnace? They just had a bundle of atoms together and then they just brought two lots of the atoms together and bang, suddenly you've got the disintegration of matter. And all they've done is release the energy that's intrinsically contained within the bounds of that atomic form. Think of the same as your souls when its energy field is released at fourth initiation. Jesus' experience, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? It becomes a supernova on its level. Then think of what a supernova is. And cosmos, you've seen pictures of it. How vast the energy is that's suddenly released. That is equated to enlightenment. When you pierce the veil of samsara to reveal śūnyātā. But samsara is śūnyātā, śūnyātā is samsara. I think the 18th chapter of the Mahāyāmākya Karika of Nagarjuna states that. It's difficult, is it not? But it's the reality. So the Buddhist concept of emptiness, or śūnyātā, or sometimes called the void, and I don't like using the void. Emptiness is a better term, but it's still not correct. None of these terms are correct. Because, as I said, it does not explain the energy field. And it's easy to use emptiness and void and translating śūnyātā, but then you need a paragraph underneath to point out that, yeah, it's empty, but it's intensely filled with space, and space is pure energy. And that space is consciousness, but with a capital C. It's mind. And with this particular philosophy we use, mind is all there is. Everything is mind. But the mind is either your empirical mind or it's logoic mind. And the logoic mind is dharmakāya. I use this term all the time in my writings. I prefer it far to the word God because it means word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's the opening statement of St. John's Gospel. And that word is logos. And so the concept of emanating word is what sustains a universe, what sustains a world sphere, what sustains you. You can think of your personality being sustained by a mantric sound that's been emanated by your souls. So it's the energy of that logoic word that you are working to bring into consciousness. Without your form, without your mind, becoming a self-destructing, I'm going to say becoming a supernova, but it becomes something like a spontaneous human combustion and be more like it, because your mind has not yet been conditioned to contain it and understand it. So that's the art of the path, testing after testing to eliminate the attributes of mind, of a small m, so that mind of a big M can take its place. And you must build the container to handle it. And so part of the container to handle it is this esoteric knowledge. Buddhists have got their own terminology, which I'm trying to explain here. I'm trying to translate their language into your language, or our language that we know. So the words can be read, but it's easy to gloss over high philosophical statements, like the word samaya. you're reading the text and it takes you, a millisecond to read the word, and you go on to the next word and the next word. And the trouble with our Western empirical tradition is that we like to read and read and read, whereas with the yoga tradition, it's a different story. I like to point this out also, is that our esteemed professors at university, now they puff themselves up with their knowledge, and it's appropriate. They study hard, they read a lot of books, they've gone to university, they've got their doctor's degree after a vast amount of study, and then they write their theses and their treatises and their books and things, explicating everything they know about that subject. And they keep their tenure at university because they write book after book explicating what they know about their subject, their specialty. Now, that's the opposite of the Buddhist and the Hindu methodology of the enlightened mind. But what we do, these statements here, for instance, these yogic texts, is condense a vast amount of knowledge into the smallest possible words that is possible to write. So eventually you get a mantra, emaho, or samaya, right? That's it. It's a condensation of vast field of knowledge. Or the word mantra, om mani padme hum, even om, or aum is another mantra. They're different. And I use the three sacred voiceless word, or the voiceless sound is called nada. And then there's the letter A, the short A, and then there's the long A, and then there's the om, and then there's aum. So all this is vowel in this word om, and most people don't understand the difference. I've mentioned Nagarjuna a few times. If you get an enlightened being, and it's undoubtedly an enlightened being, then you get these short, sort of pithy sort of statements one after the other, which is his writings. And then we pundits, scholars, spend our lifetimes interpreting them and decoding what's put in a few lines. My books are like that, right? So that's the difference between the Western and the Eastern methodology. Exceedingly parsimonious with words, everything is pregnant with meaning, and you just have to learn how to interpret what's being said. And if you've got an enlightened mind, it's easy. But for an unenlightened mind, it's all that dust flowing around the center of that tornado or hurricane or whatever it is. So the same with Guru Rinpoche, an enlightened mind, fully awakened. Of course, I'm reading out a literal, if you want, Western interpretation of the Tibetan or the Sanskrit terms. It's actually good to know the Sanskrit original terms so that you get the nuances of the meaning rather than some translator's interpretation of it. I can't do it with Tibetan, but at least I have some ability to look at Sanskrit. Anyway, so you understand the two different modes of presentation. And the mode of presentation of the yoga tradition, whether it's Hindu or Buddhist, to me is preferable to the Western tradition. However, the two go hand in hand. They're like yin yang, mother father, right? They both have their validity. We need to have concepts, words, terminology, philosophy, the whole philosophy of whatever religious tradition needs to be understood. Now, whether it's Yogacarya or Madhyamika or Hinayana, Theravada, they all have their different interpretations of fundamental concepts. So, as I said, technically, this is one interpretation. Now, so I was mentioning here in this particular thing, one of my books, Volume 4, Chapter 3, The Examination of Chaos and the Void. So I've just been explaining to you all this time something about chaos, which is samsara, and the void, which is unity, this northeast direction of the eight-armed cross. Okay, so you can all go to that particular chapter. It's a very good chapter to learn about. We've just looked at this northeast direction through the single nature of mind. Now, the single nature of mind, you can think of Logoic mind, right? What is it that is God? And what is it, mantras that cause the creation of things? And within those mantras comes all the profora for differentiation. Millions and millions of devas in the Sarid ranks, and then the precipitation of phenomena, and then eventually the appearance of Homo sapiens to do it proper, Homo sapiens sapiens, as they would call it. And then Homo sapiens sort of think that they are the lords and creators of the universe, and they think that they know it all. But then they have to go through the whole process of discovery of coming back to this unity, this single nature of mind. Whether it's the mind of Sanatkumara, or the mind of the Syrian Logos, or the mind of, say, the Logos of an Antars, it's all the same mind. They're all following the same laws of the universe. You can look at all the logi in the night sky up there and say, well, they just chakra points, all those stars and constellations, within the body of another great big entity, which in DK's books calls the one about whom naught can be said. And I explained this in my books also. The word naught means zero, it's a sphere. And we can talk a lot about that. And when you get to, if you look at the old symbolism of deity, it's a sun disk, right? And a sphere, and sometimes with a central dot. That's śūnyātā again. Or the eye is the symbol of śūnyātā, right? It's that dark pupil that light has to go through. No, this is a paradox, isn't it? Not your pupil is dark as anything, and light goes through that. And your brain then sees whatever it sees, learns, cognizes, and everything else. But the pupil is dark. That's the symbolism of śūnyātā, the symbolism of a solid disk, a logoic presence. It's the all there in the eye. So it's these universal symbols that needs to be understood, again, when you're interpreting this. But yes, everything is mind. You use your empirical minds to do things. You want to do something, and you can use your hands as tools, but the mind directs. You can cut, carve, make, lift things up, drop things, get angry, and what I'm doing, gesticulating with the hands, but it's the mind that is the directing agent, and the mind, therefore, is the ruler. But when you get rid of that empirical mind, right, that goes, what takes its place is logoic mind. Then that is the ruler. It's a different order of expression, because logoic mind is dharmakāya, and that logoic mind is the creator of whatever is, not so much your little things, such as me picking up this pen and writing a few words. That's my mind that creates that. But when it comes to a phenomenal form such as a world sphere, it's a logoic mind. But it's the same principles used. And then I was talking about that logos, the one about whom naught can be said. I always shortened it to that logos. So what is that? That's again the same principle. So it is the just transcended levels of the same attitude. So śūnyātā is just the beginning, the birthing of the experience of that. When I use the term that, with capital T, it can go all the way back to a throne or seat of power of the one about whom naught can be said in the bodies of light stars. And such a being is but a one of a whole company of similar beings, brothers and sisters, that inhabit our galaxy. And so if you can think of human units walking on this earth, think of those that logi being human units within a galaxy, interrelating similar as we do, but on their level of expression. It's transmuted correspondences, and you've got to think that way. Now, I can't put my mind at that level and know exactly the way they are acting as human units and their level. Of course, the Greeks, Romans, they have the mythology of the gods. Hera, Hecata, and Zeus, so all those other, Mercury and Hephaestus, or Pluto, they're all human, right? Anthropomorphic, they're human entities. They have emotions and all the rest of that. And the enlightened amongst the Greeks reified what actually exists on the inner realms, those characteristics of those deities. And here, Buddhism does the same, but it gets rid of the deities. I mean, it's got its versions of the deities, the bodhisattvas, all of these, the Harukas, the wrathful and peaceful deities. Yeah, it's got all of them. But all of those in Buddhism, when you look at those images, they're called aspects of mind. They're not deities, they're attributes of mind, or personifications of attributes of mind would be closer to it. It's the Sambhogakaya level of expression. So all of this has naturally been present from beginning, and you have not recognized it. And so the training is for you to recognize what already exists. And it's not this phenomenal world. It's transient. We know that, we're all getting older. Now, number 2 is, even though its radiance and awareness has never been interrupted, you have not yet encountered its true face. Now, number 2 here is the eastern direction, and it relates to the way inwards to the heart of life, therefore refers to the heart center is established, and that which can be considered life's blood. And the mandala can circulate. Such would normally be interpreted in terms of the pranas that produce liberation. Here they signify the natural emanation of the mind, viewed in terms of its luminosity or radiance and lucid awareness, as expressed throughout the mandala. And so we start off with mind, and then we get the beginning of the appearance of whatever you might call phenomena. And the beginning of the appearance of the phenomena is in the eastern direction, and it produces the heart. The heart is life. From the heart comes the bloodstreams and all the rest of it that sustains the form of whatever it is to be. So this is natural lucidity. Then I make a note here, the true face is not just a figure of speech, but literally refers to the 7 facial orifices: 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and a mouth. And then this brings into expression the septenaries of nature, right? So you've got all the septenates coming into expression through the true face. We'll go back to this particular phrase. You have not yet encountered its true face. And therefore, we get our esoteric philosophy just hidden in that word, right? In that little phrase. Now, most Buddhists will absolutely just brush over this and go quickly on to the next thing, not realizing that there's a massive meditation on the concept of what a face is. What is a face? What does it express? What does it represent? What does it symbolize? How does it come into being? What is that septenary? So we get the process of emanation of form. You have not yet encountered its true face, even though your mind is radiant and full of awareness. And so he's saying, look down and look at the emanation of whatever that is, the underlying septenaries that produce the appearance of the form, 7 rays, etc. Now, third one will bring us now down to the arena of expression. Now, the arena of expression brings us into the beginning of the manifestation of form. It's literally the qualities of the sign Cancer, the crab of mass incarnation. Even though it rises unimpededly in every facet of existence, so now we get the multi-dimensional, the rippling effect of these septenaries. You have not yet recognized this single nature of mind. So even though the mind manifests septenaries, reverberating out through all of space, and this is the nature of the enlightened mind that can see all of that, well, you have not yet recognized the true nature of mind, which lies behind that phenomena. So next we have the southeast direction of expression, where the needed characteristics are seeded into the matrix of the mandala, which is samsara, it thus arises unimpededly in every facet of existence. The entire gamut of evolutionary development of mind and its eventual conversion into mind must now be accomplished, associated with the rest of the arms of the cross, so that the single nature of mind can be recognized. And so we get the appearance of phenomena. So you're looking from below upwards, this is where we are at, but Guru Rinpoche is explaining it from above downwards, starting with the abstract mind and then the production of the septenaries, or first of all, the heart, or the seed, and the bija of it all. The heart is at the center of each chakra, and then the septenaries radiate out as the petals of the lotus. And then they produce the rippling effect of the form of the appearance of cosmos, similar with the concept of the Big Bang in modern physics. You know, it all starts from some seed point, and then suddenly something caused some mighty explosion, and within a few seconds, there's stage after stage of the appearance of suns, or galaxies or whatever. They've got their time scale, you know, so many milliseconds this has happened, within 1 minute that has happened, you know, within one day the universe expanded to this and all the stars have appeared. It's this sort of thing, the same type of concept. And then he continues with his thesis on, you can see it's on creation, the creation story from the Buddhist perspective. In order that this single nature might be recognized by you, the conquerors of the three times have taught an inconceivably vast number of practices, including the 84,000 aspects of the sacred teachings. And when he says the 84,000 aspects of the sacred teachings, we're moving from the chakras to the nadis. And he's saying, look, now the entire body of the nadis have appeared. All of the energy fields, all the energy conduits of the manifestation of the form to be has now appeared. These are all the sacred teachings, right? Each nadi contains a teaching. Each nadi is different to the other nadis. They contain different energies and concepts that you can write down in books. Because if you're sort of, for instance, what's the 84,000 nadis of our planetary logos? How does it manifest in all the diversity of nature? What about the 84,000 nadis of a solar logos? How does that manifest through all of the planetaries and the planetoids and all of the lives within a solar system? These are all the sacred texts. The devas start singing those notes. So you can see that these sacred books, you know, this is just one little portion of a vast panoply of Buddhist texts. Many enlightened beings have come and written. And when you read those, you can do what most people do, is just quickly read and then go on to the next one. It's all exciting, good stuff. Let's see what's in it. But in reality, with Buddhism, you pick a particular sacred text, whatever it is that's your school, and you spend the rest of your life analyzing, studying, developing the understanding of those words by that enlightened being. And same with Hinduism. Yeah, I've chosen the Bardo Thödol, but for for a long time, I really wanted to do the Kala Chakra Tantra. It was more complex and would have gone into astrology more, but I would have had to gone into Chinese astrology, which is what the Tibetans used, and it would have taken me much longer. Now, so number 4, my explanation here, the direction that now confronts us is south. So this is right down into the material domain, the realm of the little ones. So the whole nadi system has appeared, and from the nadi system automatically comes the physical form, wherein the deepest immersion into samsara is manifest. It thus has the sum of the interrelationships that incarnation brings. Here is found the activity of the Buddhas of the three times, of the past, Dipankara, the present, Gautama, and the future, Maitreya. They are the conquerors of samsaras, the Buddhas that come to educate us all with the symbolic 84,000 doctrines, thereby guiding us away from bondage. When analyzing a large number, such as 84,000, the zeros simply mean a vast proportion, literally that which awakens a thousand-petal lotus. The real implication is veiled by the number 84, which equals 7 times 12. And here we have the septenaries of life implied, ordered according to the 12 petals of the heart chakra, with their zodiacal implications unfold. Their 7 ray attributes are multiplied by the way of activity of the heart center, so that inevitably the 12 major petals of the head center are awakened. Literally, this is the door of the Dharma. Within this unfoldment is veiled the development of the sum of the samskaras and attributes of mind, and the way they are transformed into enlightenment attributes. Now, what I didn't go into, and what I left out in this particular interpretation, is all the astrological connotations. I've done that a little bit. For instance, in volume 3 of my book, Treatise on Mind, I go into astrology and laid a foundation for astrological interpretation of Buddhist scriptures. But it's just far too much information. Now, the number 84, 7 times 12, well, it brings us to Libra. And what is Libra? It's the turning of the wheel of the chakras, right? And of course, it's the whole cycle of meditation, of contemplation, everything to do with the meditation process. The production of karma, therefore karma comes into expression. So this particular southern direction, and once he mentions the word 84, then everything to do with karma, Libra, the turning of the wheels of all the chakras, all the petals, the introduction of the 12 signs of zodiac, and the turning of all the energies comes into manifestation. You can see what Guru Rinpoche was using Buddhist philosophy, and without spelling it out, the whole process of a creation is there. And then 5. Yet, despite this diversity, he's already given our diversity, right? Diversity is now the appearance of samsara, yes? Not even one of these teachings has been given by the conquerors outside the context of understanding this nature, which of course is the real nature of mind. There's a phrase sometimes that the Buddha has opened his mouth but has never said anything. Of course, everyone knows that he said a lot. All the Buddhist sutras and the philosophy that people are studying and reading and then promulgating and so forth. But the meaning of he's never said anything relates to the void, to the intrinsic understanding of what śūnyātā is. There's nothing to be said because everything that is said is the transience of samsara. The reality is something else altogether. So when we get to this 5th direction, where we're getting to, therefore, is understanding. And so when he says, never said anything outside the context of understanding of this nature. Now, we've got the word understanding there in the translation, right? And this 5th direction, this southwest direction, according to DKs, is understanding, right? That's the way we write it down. We now come to the southwest arm of this cross entitled understanding. This relates to what is gained through experiencing of samsara. So in the earlier one, we got the appearance of samsara. Now, what is the purpose of samsara? Understanding. The text simply informs us that no matter what these Buddhists have taught, all such teachings are in the context of the transformation of the attributes developed by mind, with a small m, into those of mind, with a capital M. The understanding then concerns what constitutes the naturalness of mind. So one of the reasons I'm giving this talks is for all of you to understand just how profound the sutras of the enlightened beings are. You just cannot read them quickly. You need a mind, something like what you're developing in order to understand, right? Because there's a vast amount of information that's veiled. And unless you understand, for instance, early on, the 84,000 nadis, 84 is the important word, and it relates to the concept of Libra, and then all the rest of that. And if you don't have that background knowledge, you will never conceive of what's really meant. And this is the problem with the Buddhist teachers. They don't have the background knowledge. They don't have this esoteric tradition. The esoteric tradition has been closed to them now. They used to have enlightened beings amongst them, but not now. It's gone. So everything through experiencing of samsara is veiled there. But the experience of samsara is to learn the naturalness of mind, the capital M. And therefore, we're developing through the earlier sign Libra, the meditation tradition to get there, or to get back to there. We are seeded into phenomena, and now through meditation and the whole process, we're learning to unravel all of that and get back to the original state of mind, which is Logoic mind, which is mantra. And once you do that, we get to the Western arm, and the Western arm is, and even though there are inestimable volumes of sacred writings, equally vast as the limits of space, actually, these teachings can be succinctly expressed in a few words, which are the introduction to awareness. And here again, I've just told you the difference between the West and the East is there. The East, a few words. The West, volumes of writings. But what he's talking about here now is the Bodhisattva path, because the volumes of writings, what are they for? They're for educating the mass out there. The mass out there will never ever understand the meaning of those few words, but you give them volumes of writings that can inspire them. And so the Western direction is outwards into the field of service. It's me writing volumes and volumes of books, right? That's the field of service. It's you reciprocating in your own way. You're opening up your mouths and speaking to those around you. And this is the Western direction. So there's either a few words, like Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light. No man cometh to the Father but by me. A few words, but it's pregnant with a vast amount of esoteric philosophy. Of course, when he said that, the scribes and the Pharisees around him and all the common people thought he was blaspheming. He was blaspheming, right? In those days. He was crucified for that. But what he spoke was the truth. They just didn't understand the inner meaning. And so the Western direction, the understanding gained is utilized in the outward field of service, that is humanity. This has produced many volumes of sacred writings generated by wise philosophers and enlightened. Effectively, these teachings fill all directions of space. Nevertheless, the esoteric doctrine, though existentially vast, can be simplified in a few symbols or mantric utterances. Literally, it needs but a few words to explain the essence of what is implicated. The vast output of wisdom and its distilled essence is but the introductory background to the revelations obtainable through the knowledge of mind. And then we get to the seventh, the northwest direction. Here's the direct face-to-face introduction to the enlightened intention of the conquerors. Now, if we're thinking in terms of astrology, then this northwest direction would be Sagittarius. It would be the archer firing his arrows to the mountaintop or to the target goal, whether it's a chakra or the head center being awakened or whether it's hierarchy, that you're firing arrows to the conquerors and to become one of them. We proceed to the crux of the matter in the final two statements. The northwest direction constitutes the outward expression of the emanatory will of love, or bodhicitta. And Sagittarius, as I said, that fires the arrows, if you can think of the arrows of bodhicitta, of the enlightenment mind, of the compassionate consciousness, projecting thereby the gain of the entire evolutionary procession. This allows the liberated ones to meet face to face with the Buddhas. When you generate this bodhicitta and you fire the arrows up the mountain to enlightenment, that's what happens. You awaken to the enlightened beings, to the hierarchy of light, to the Buddha himself, to the Lord of the world, face to face with the Buddhas. And of course, you learn directly from them. This is where all of you are at, right? In this seventh direction, firing your arrows upwards. Esoterically, the statement refers to attainment the same level of dimensions of perception where the jina is a Sanskrit term for the Buddhas of meditation. Ultimately, in many ways, this philosophy of mind, which I promulgate, is the Buddhas of meditation, the 5 Buddhas of meditation, which are the jinas, and to gain their wisdoms. From eye to eye can information now be directly transmitted. Now, I've mentioned early on about your little eye and how that's a sun and how it veils the symbolism of śūnyātā. Now, eye to eye is not just these little eyes. That's one way, but that's, if you want, the intellectual way. When we speak to each other, we face each other and we speak eye to eye. When people are blinking or turning their face away, you know that they don't particularly want to hear what you have to say. If they're standing there and watching you and looking at your eyes, then they're quite clearly interested in what you're saying. But the proper eye-to-eye symbolism is from Ajna Center, the third eye to third eye. And so the transmission of knowledge at this particular level, when you're at the level of the jinas, is not with mouths. It's direct from eye to eye. Images are projected that way. The whole history of the world, and you've seen it in your own meditation, a flash of revelation. You'll get that flash. You want to write it down, you can spend many, many pages just writing down what happened in 1 millisecond. And that's the concept of from eye to eye. The master of wisdom has used their eye to project into your eye, which is your head center, that image. So no veils of substance or ignorance exists between the victors, right? Ignorance is all gone. Substance is all gone. It's just the eye, the center of that hurricane, and both of you are there, and you see eye to eye. Now, that's the way enlightened beings transmit information to each other, eye to eye. Direct visual in your meditations, you get the images when you're zapping. That's the mechanism of the awakened perception of the will of love. The luminous expression of all 7 chakras ablaze speak volumes to them. Enlightened purpose can then be projected to where is needed. And then we get to the 8th stanza, which of course is the northern direction. Astrologically, this would be Capricorn. You're on the mountaintop. Now, here is the method for entering actual reality. So you can see now, the mountaintop, actual reality. In this very moment, without reference to past or future events, all that is gone. Just simply, you're in the reality of what is on that mountaintop. The northern direction of upwards to the divine refers to the complete attainment of the dharmakāya mind and the lucid, pristine awareness of its clear light. One then resides in the eternal now, with no need to revert to past habits or to anxiously anticipate the future. All is comprehended in one timeless embrace of revelation. That's on the mountaintop. Past, present, and future is one. There's nothing more to really anticipate or know. And on the mountaintop, you fly into the all mind of the Logos, Shambhala, if you wish, hierarchy, whatever it is that is your level of attainment, of liberation. Because, as I said, there are levels of enlightenment. The Buddhists seem to think there's only one. They talk of śūnyātā enlightenment, and that's it. But in reality, there's, as you know, level after level of the attainment of enlightenment, because there's level after level of initiation. Even the Buddha is fully realized as far as earth conditions go, but not out there in cosmos, not out there when he goes into the realm of the stars. There he's a child. And there's others that have preceded him aeons and aeons and aeons ago. Former solar systems ago they've attained. But the Buddhists can't get beyond the concept of Buddha because their terminology vanishes at this point. It's beyond the limitations of their particular extent, their method of using language. So this was basically just simply the introduction to the book. And you can see that when you can read a text like this properly, how joyous it is, how beautiful these texts really are. And everything to do with Buddhism and with the Buddhist masters is seated in compassion. So I'm going to stop here, and we'll start with next section next week.